Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here with the System Simplified podcast, where we interview top entrepreneurs, founders, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And this podcast is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group. At Business Success Consulting Group, we create custom processes and tailor-made business systems so businesses can thrive and grow. And today's guest is Marcus Sheridan. Hi, Marcus.
Hello, Adi. A pleasure to be here today.
Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. Marcus is the author of They Ask, You Answer. And it is an amazing book. I just finished listening to it, and I so agree with the philosophy and with the advice that you give there. And I think it's a book that every entrepreneur must read. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. And
thank you for that. Yeah,
you're welcome.
It's something that's crazy about the book is the original version came out in 2017. Then I did a revised version at the end of 2019. It's selling more today than it did when it came out. Usually books have the opposite effect, right? So they sell a lot at first and they fizzle out. But what's so neat, it's become a movement over these last 4.5, 5 years, and it just keeps getting bigger. And that's very, very cool to see.
Absolutely, because I think it's really also word of mouth. I mean, I heard about that book from a mutual client that we have, that he recommended that book because he read it, and then he basically contacted you, and he's actually now, you're doing your marketing firm is doing a project for him and helping him to actually implement those principles. So right. I read the book and I'm like, wow, that makes total sense. So let's start talking about the book and what, our listeners are probably thinking, what is this book all about? All right. So let's just so if you had to give a synopsis, just describe very succinctly what is the book about, and then we'll start talking about the different aspects of it.
Yeah. So if somebody says to me, Marcus, what is They Ask, You Answer? I would say They Ask, You Answer is an obsession, keyword obsession, with the questions, worries, fears, issues, concerns that our customers and potential customers are asking, and the willingness for us to address those through text, through video on our website. So that's where it starts. That's the key to it. You don't hide from anything. In fact, you lean into it because you're willing to address those questions, worries, fears, issues, concerns, and nobody else is, or so few are. You become that voice of trust. And because you become that voice of trust, you ultimately win the business. And that's the circle of life.
Yeah. So it's really a way of building your business and creating the trust with your customers, potential clients, so they trust you. And that's basically becomes your sales cycle.
Well, yeah. And, a lot of people, they would hear it and say, well, Marcus, that sounds pretty basic, right? I mean, I've got a website and we answer some customers' questions, but the reality is the very high majority of businesses do not address nor answer the fundamental questions that buyers, consumers, prospects want to know during that buyer's journey. And we know from all the studies that the typical buyer today, before they reach out to a company, is somewhere between 70 to 80% through the journey. So through that buying process. In other words, they are vetting us to death. They're vetting our companies, our products, our services. And because of this, they're more informed than they've ever been. We're more informed than we've ever been as consumers and as buyers. There's no mystery. There's no surprise. But the fact is, too many companies still act like it's 1995, the year before the internet took off, and are living in this place where, we're not going to address that. We're not going to talk about that. We're going to wait until if the person asks us, then we'll address it. But otherwise, let's not go there. Too many say that. And because of that, they don't win the trust.
Absolutely. So, our listener can say, okay, Marcus, how do you know that this actually works? So obviously they need to read the book, because then you tell your own personal story, which I thought was an amazing story. And you really shared what happened, right? And how did you start using this methodology and what happened? So can you tell the listeners a little bit about that story?
So I'll give you my brief background, right? And also for those that are listening, is They Ask You Answer the book itself has sold over 150,000 copies, and there's literally now world-class case studies all over the place. It's really amazing to watch, but it started with me and my little swimming pool installation company that I started with two buddies out of university in 2001. And things were going okay for the company. You know, we were pushing hard and trying to grow it. And then the market collapses in 2008. And we thought we were going to lose business. We thought we were going to file bankruptcy. And I was going to lose my home. My two business partners were going to lose their homes. My 60 employees at the time would have lost their jobs. So we had to figure out how to get back over that edge, right?
And you had a family at the time. You had your first.
Oh gosh, yeah, I had. Yeah, by that point, I think I had like 3 kids. And so, you know, I have 4 today, but the point is, we were in really big trouble. It was very stressful, as many business owners can relate to. And that's the beauty, though, of stress, is I started to think about things differently. And I was more willing to take some risk. And I started to lean into the internet and read all these phrases like inbound marketing, content marketing, social media, blogging, all that stuff, you know, that we take for granted now. But, you know, when I was reading about those things, what I heard in my simple pool guy mind was, you know, Marcus, if you just obsess over your customers' questions and you're willing to address them on your website, you might save your business. So I said, well, shoot, if there's one thing I can do, is I can listen well and I can address those questions well through text, through video on my website. And so I sat down, I brainstormed all the questions that anybody would ever think of if they're considering, in my case, a fiberglass in-ground swimming pool. And to make a long story really short, within about 2 years, we became the most trafficked swimming pool website in the world. We still are today in terms of pool builders. And it went so well that I started getting leads from all over the country, even though I was just in Virginia. And that led to us starting to manufacture pools. And then that led to us being a franchise of all these small river pools that are now all over the country growing. And it's just amazing. And it started because of the simple philosophy of They Ask You Answer. And of course, as this was all happening, I started to write about it. And then people started to say, hey, can you teach me how to do this? Can you speak about this at my event? And so it led to me to have a full-time career as a speaker. And that's what I've done for a decade now. And I've got an agency. It's called Impact. And it has about 60 some employees. And we teach companies how to implement this beautiful framework that is They Ask You Answer.
Amazing. So what's the website of the pool company if people want to see an example of what you do with a good website, with a wonderful website? Yeah.
It's riverpoolsandspas.com. Or you can just go online and probably ask any question you can think of about a fiberglass pool, and I promise it'll probably come up in the first couple of results, right?
That's incredible. And then then that's for the pool company. So if somebody wants to see an example, but then your marketing company is Impact
impactplus.com, impactplus.com. And you want to talk about a wealth of information, free information that you can get. You'll find it at Impact Plus. We really eat our own dog food there.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, maybe we can use a different analogy, but a good one. You eat your own ice cream. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. All right, great. Well, definitely check out those websites. I mean, the website, impactplus.com. And you also, I know in the book, you give your email address. You say if people want to contact you, do you still do that?
Of course. My personal email is marcus@marcussheridan.com. So marcus@marcussheridan.com. And that's really, it's been a lot of fun because a lot of people say, well, that's not really scalable, is it? I'm like, well, sometimes you just throw scale out the door and you say, if somebody really wants to reach out to me and ask me a question, I want to give them the ability to do it. And hopefully I'll be able to answer them in a timely manner. But, I love making those personal connections. And the ones that reach out to you directly, those are the ones that have a real story, right? And it's very, very fascinating to hear them and to hear so many applying They Ask You Answer, because there's nuances to it. And frankly, a lot of people do it wrong, even though they say, yeah, I'm answering my customers' questions. Again, it's like, no, there's nuances to it. That's why the book is what it is so that you can start to understand, okay, that's how you do that.
Right. So let's talk Okay, so we got the background, and you definitely, you're walking the walk, right? You're running the run, actually. I mean, you are doing what you're preaching in the book. And that actually it's the opposite. You did it, and then you basically took what you did and wrote it in the book so other people can follow. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the concepts of the book. So they asked you answers. So what are the main concepts that you're covering in the book?
Well, the biggest breakthrough for a lot of people that read the book occurs when they read about the big five. And so what are the big five? The big five are the 5 subjects that all buyers, consumers tend to research before they reach out to a company, before they buy a product, before they buy a service, okay? So these 5 fundamental subject areas that we're obsessed with as consumers and buyers in terms of our research, yet businesses do not like to talk about these 5 things on their website, which creates a problem.
So
right?
What are those 5? Let's
Once.
hear them out.
So what are the 5 things? So here's the 5. First one is cost and price. As consumers, we're obsessed with how much is it. We want to know all things to do with cost factors, considerations, budgets, etc. So that's number 1. Number 2, as consumers and buyers, we want to know what are the problems or the negatives with it. In other words, how could this blow up in my face? What could go wrong if I purchase this thing? Okay, so that's number 2. So we got cost and problems. Number 3, comparisons. We love to compare online. Think about how many times you've compared 2 things online, this versus that, this compared to that. We're prolific at it because we want to feel like, okay, I've done my due diligence and I can see how these stack up against each other, and therefore I'm getting a good value. So we're obsessed with comparisons. Number 4, we're obsessed with reviews. We want to know what people say about the thing. We want to know the good, the bad, and the ugly of the thing, right? And then finally, number five, best. Think about how many times you've gone online and searched best such and such online, or most, or there's many different derivatives of best, but we're constantly searching for best of. And so cost, problems, comparisons, reviews, and best. Those are the big 5. And my guess is we're now going to talk about how to address those things, because that's where the rubber meets the road, unless there's another question that you have.
Absolutely. We can address that. It's also explained very well in the book. And I can also tell the listeners that it's not what you think. You go, oh, so now I'm going to put my cost on the website. No, I mean, you explain it very well in the book, how you actually, what do you do there? So even if you don't put the exact cost, they can still, the reader or the person that is actually searching, the potential customer can understand, can come out of there with an idea of what it is and still want to contact you, right? Because sometimes it's impossible to write a cost, because you do need to estimate. Because if you are like in the swimming pool, if you have a small swimming pool or a big swimming pool, or it might be, it's the different, it can be harder or easier to install, depends on the tile, whatever it is, there are differences, but you're educating the customer to understand what comprises that cost. So they will understand when you say, well, it depends. It's not you're just saying because you don't want to tell what the cost is, but there are factors that go into play. And then when they will, they will schedule the estimate. They understand that they need somebody there to actually estimate the project, and then they will get the cost, right?
Yeah. So immediately to your point, and it was well made, people think, oh, he's telling me I have to put a price on the website. No, what we have to do is we have to define what value looks like in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. And if we don't do that, people will make uninformed decisions. Ignorance is what commoditizes a product or service. How do we decommoditize something? We lean into teaching as to what constitutes cost and price. And so I would submit that everybody should have at least one cost price, let's say, page to your website. Sometimes it's many more than that, because I would say one per every major product or service that you offer. Okay. And in that page, that article, or that video even, there's really 5 parts to do this effectively. So part number 1 would be, what drives the cost of that service or product up in the industry? Okay, the factors that drive it up. Number 2, what are the factors that keep the cost down when you're buying that product or service? Number 3, why are some companies so expensive? In other words, what makes a company more expensive? that sells that product or service. Number 4, why are some companies so cheap? Right? So notice the first 4 out of 5, this is all about the industry. It's actually not about you at all. And so this is where you're defining value in the marketplace. Now, number 5 is roughly, what do you charge? Now, if you can't put exact pricing, because many companies cannot, what you can absolutely do is you can give general ranges as to what people might spend. You can help them understand, again, all those factors. You can show different, let's say, visuals of types of projects and roughly what that might cost. So you don't need to back yourself in a corner, but we do have to be willing to address this. Now, this is B2B, this is B2C, this is service, this is product. Nobody that's listening to this right now is the exception of what I just said, because you're a human. And so therefore, it means as a human, you have developed this desire to want to understand things like, I just want a general sense for how much is this going to cost me before you reach out to the company, to the organization. That's standard. That makes someone normal. And for anybody that says, I just don't think that would work in my industry, I have a simple question to ask you. If you were a potential buyer in your space, would you appreciate it if someone was willing to teach you about cost and price considerations? And of course, the answer is yes, Marcus. Yes.
That's right. Absolutely. And what we do is we create playbooks and we document processes and procedures for companies and make sure and put systems in there and systematize it so they can actually transfer knowledge and train employees. And I hear that, well, I can't systematize that process, or I can't really write a process down because we do it in variable ways. So I do hear that we are the exception, but I say the same thing as you. There are no exceptions. B2B, B2C, service, product, you have to know how you're doing something, and you need to be able to document it. So it's absolutely the same way. You have a process, how you reach your price, and you need to share that process. Not necessarily share your profitability and how you do that, but basically explain like, okay, so if I am an estimator, or if you are the estimator, you come into my house to estimate like painting the house, you have a process of what you look at. So you can tell me, all right, well, when I come and look at your house, this is what I look at, this, and that, and that's how I price it. There are companies that price it more, companies that price it less, or maybe you are the most expensive. Okay, I am the most expensive because such and such, right? So you're explaining, so I know ahead of time that I'm going to, and when I look at your website, that I'm going to call you. But if I already calling you, I know that you're the most expensive. So if I'm already calling you to come and give me an estimate, I'm ready to pay your prices. If I'm looking for the cheapest one, I'm not going to call you, which is fine, because that will allow you to actually open the door for your customers, for your ideal customer, right?
That's right. I mean, this is a beautiful thing when companies start talking more and teaching more about cost and price, et cetera. What's interesting is they find, again, I've got the data on this. I've worked with now hundreds of companies on this. So it's not like I'm not just hypothetically speaking.
Right.
What they find is they get more, not less specific over time with what they're willing to say and tell and show. And of course, the reason for that is because the lead quality improves dramatically. It's no brainer. And you become much more attractive to those who you are a good fit for, right? So it's like, why would you not want to be more efficient and save everybody more time and follow the golden rule like we're talking about here? But it's just a lot of people say, well, nobody's done that in my industry. Oh, that's actually the biggest reason why you should. That would excite me to no end. Somebody says, nobody's ever talked about cost and price in our space. I'm like, oh yeah, time to rock and roll. And what's funny too of these is, because of the reach now and impact of They Ask You Answer, I've had entire industries that like maybe they heard me on a stage and one of the companies said, okay, we're going to do this. And they started talking about cost and price, or they built a pricing calculator on their website, or whatever the thing was I was teaching about. And suddenly, boom, you see the entire industry is doing it. And it's just like one chip falls and then the dominoes just keep going from there. And that's why if you really want to be incredibly successful online in 2022 and beyond, you don't spend your time thinking about what everybody else has done. You spent your time thinking about, well, what would I want if I was a shopper, if I was a buyer, if I was a consumer? What's the marketplace looking for here? And is it possible, before I say no, it's not possible, is it possible that I do this? Let me give you an example. So today I have a manufacturing company of fiberglass swimming pools, and we do not set the end price for the customer with our franchisees, with our dealers. They set the end price. So is it possible on my website that I have a pricing calculator? Yes, it still is possible. But how would I do that? Well, once again, I would give them, once they were able to input the things that they wanted, maybe it was the pool shape and the accessories, etc., then I'm able to output to them a general price range that they're probably going to spend. And I can also say, though, it could be more or less depending on a variety of factors. But what does that mean? Well, that means I get more leads than pretty much all the other fiberglass pool manufacturers combined, simply because we're the only one that has a pricing calculator on our website.
Absolutely. I recorded a podcast with Simon Severino where he asked me about who zigs when everybody else zags, or who zags when everybody else zigs. It's like that is a great example of that, because it doesn't matter what others are doing. It's what you're doing, and you can be a look at Uber and Lyft and all the other companies that disrupted the disruptors, right? So you are, it can be the early adapters, but it really depends on who is willing to follow and who is not, right?
Well, I love the zigzag analysis, right? Because that's why, going back to what I said about when someone tells me, well, that's just not how we do it in our industry. I'm like, so are you saying that you want to do it like everybody else?
Right.
You want to follow the standards that have been set for you? Or you want to create your own standards of excellence, your own standards of trust, right? You want to create new paths, new trails. I mean, I don't know about you, but I want to create my own path to success, right? And that's why we get into business in the first place.
Right. That's exactly right. So we talked about the cost. Now we have the other four. So what's the second one?
So the second one is problems. And sometimes people misunderstand this one, but what's really fascinating about problems or negatives is whenever we're getting serious about engaging a company or buying a product, we start to have doubt, and we research that doubt. So let me give you an example, again, with fiberglass pools. So there's just lots of things that, for years, people would say to me like, Marcus, what are the problems with fiberglass pools? Or Marcus, is it true that fiberglass pools pop out of the ground? Or fiberglass pools ugly? Marcus, do fiberglass pools look cheap? Does that look like a bathtub in my yard? Like, these are the questions that people would ask. So what's my choice? My choice is I can ignore those questions and act like they don't exist, or I can openly address them on my website. And lo and behold, it turns out that when you openly address them, you get in front of the conversation and you own the conversation, right? And so one of the most profitable articles we've ever written was specific to the problems with fiberglass pools. All right, what are the biggest problems with fiberglass pools? And I've got another client who's a metal roofing manufacturer. Most profitable video they've ever produced and article, both on both ends, was what are the 7 biggest problems of a metal roof? This is a metal roofing manufacturer that's producing that. And it got over 250,000 views in 2 years. Why? Because when people are interested in a metal roof, turns out they want to know what could go wrong. When you're not interested in buying it, you don't care. When you're interested in buying it, that's when you're asking. So that's problems.
That is so true. So basically, because I'm looking at myself, when I want to buy something. So let's say I bought a washing machine,
Yep.
Yes, I will read the reviews, but I can also look, I probably will search, problems with this particular, let's say
Correct.
It's in whatever manufacturer, are there any problems? Because I want to know if people are complaining or if it's breaking
Correct.
down or anything like that. So if you put it on your website, it will actually show up on your website and you can
Correct.
go there. And one of the things, I have an example, I was looking for a water filter and, I was basically debating between one technology to another, right? So then I was looking, I think it was the direct osmosis. So I look at the direct problems with direct osmosis. Well, it showed up on the website of the competitor that is using another technology. So immediately I didn't trust that, because of course the competitor is going to say, oh yeah, they were basically saying all the problems with that. But if it was actually if it would have been on the website of the manufacturer that I ended up buying from, it would have been more credible for me, because they are saying this is a problem, but this is how they solved it, or this is a problem, but here are the pros and the cons, and that's maybe more the comparison, not the problem. But because you will trust it more if it's on your website, as opposed to trust it if it's on the competitors, there's somebody using a different technology. Of course they're going to say that this is not good because they want to sell their own.
Well, it's just one of those things where, once again, companies push back on this. And I just love to say, first off, has anybody ever asked you about this thing? I'm like, well, yeah, but do you think your shoppers, your buyers, do you think they're dumb? Now, I personally don't believe they're dumb. And so I think if somebody wants to find out the information, they're going to find out. So my mindset is, well, they may as well find it out from me. I would much rather that be the case, right? And so, that's the capability that we have to get in front of the issues. And so that's the second one, problems, right? The third one is comparisons. Now, there's lots of comparison types of questions that people ask. They might ask your product versus a competing product. They might ask your product versus another product that you sell, or this option versus that option, right? So there's many versus questions. In fact, one of the healthiest activities you can do is go online, go to Google, and type in your product, and then type versus, or type in your company and type in versus, or type in your methodology and type in versus, and just see what populates. It's so fascinating. So the question is, have you addressed these questions yet? Now, you got to be very careful, though, when you do versus-based content, because naturally people expect you to be biased. And so you want to disarm them. And the book talks a lot about how to disarm people. And the key is you say something that surprises them. It almost makes them flinch. It makes them say, oh my goodness, I can't believe how honest this person is. So let's be hypothetical. Let's say I was producing a video or an article, and it was fiberglass versus concrete pools, which is best for me, right? So that might be the title of the article or the video. So I might say something like this. And keep in mind, I'm a fiberglass pool builder. So I might say, one of the questions I get all the time is, Marcus, be honest. Tell me, why should I choose fiberglass over concrete? Well, the truth is, you shouldn't always choose fiberglass over concrete. In fact, there are times when concrete is the better option. So what this video or what this article is going to do, it's going to explain to you honestly and transparently the pros and the cons of both types of pools. And then hopefully by the end, you'll have a great sense as to which is the best choice for you, right? So just think about that for a second. Like, how many companies speak to you like that online? Are they like almost none? Almost none are ever willing to say, yeah, we might not be the best fit for you, and that's okay. Yeah, they could be the better option, and that's okay. And so by saying that, you disarm the reader or the listener. You make them lean in and say, okay, I'll play. I can see this company thinks differently. They have my best interest at heart.
So Marcus, I know we're on number 3. I want to cover 4 and 5, but I had a question. So it seems to me like you really need to know who is your target market, who is your ideal customer, in order to create the content correctly, right? Because if I need to say, you might not be, we might not be the right fit for you, I have to understand who am I a good fit for, right?
Yeah, in fact, I'm a heavy believer and espouser of everybody should have a section on their website that talks about who they're not a good fit for. And because the moment you're able to say who you're not a good fit for is the moment you become dramatically more attractive to those who you are a good fit for in business.
Yeah.
And the companies that don't know who they're not a good fit for and don't state it, a couple things happen. Number one, they end up taking on work they don't want to take on. It's a bad fit for them, and it creates stress, and they don't enjoy their job as much. The other side to it is, if you're not clear about that, especially on your website, you run the risk of attracting leads that are clearly not qualified or not right for you. And what does that do? It just sucks up your time.
Right.
And I don't know about you, but I don't want to be spending time with those leads that are clearly not a good fit. And so if you know you are, if you define it well, once again, everybody wins. And that's a beautiful thing.
I agree. Totally. Okay, so let's go to number 4.
Number 4. So number 4 is reviews. So we've talked about costs, problems, comparisons. Now we've got reviews. And so we are obsessed with reviews in society. Now, oftentimes companies will say to me, though, Marcus, they're not looking for like my review, are they? And the answer is yes, they're actually looking for your review. The key, though, is how do you deliver it? And this goes back to this component of transparency and honesty that we've been discussing here. So if you sell a product, should you review your products? Yes. Should you do reviews by video, article, etc.? Yes. But the key is you have to learn, once again, to talk about who it is and who it isn't a good fit for, and what are the pros and what are the cons of that particular thing. So if I'm going to do a review of fiberglass pools, let's say, I need to be willing to say, now fiberglass pools aren't a great fit for people that want a really long pool because they don't get longer than 40 feet. They don't get wider than 16 feet. Also, if you're looking for something super customized in terms of shape or size, fiberglass probably isn't going to be a good option because we're limited to the shapes and sizes that we have available to you. Right. So it's like that type of conversation. Again, most companies aren't willing to do it, but I see companies that sell like a furniture company comes to me and says, "Hey, Marcus, we're doing the Ask You Answer," and they're creating reviews of their products. If the only thing they say is why their product is awesome, why that sofa or recliner or love seat is awesome, then they haven't won the trust fully over of their audience. They need to add a section of that review that it openly says, "Now listen, who would this sofa not be a good fit for? Or what are some of the drawbacks to this sofa? Or what does this sofa not do that others can do that you might want to consider as well?" Got to show both sides of the coin. It's very, very important if you want to win the trust. So that's reviews. And then the final is best. Best, that's your final. And best comes in many different ways and forms, but one of the most common that you see that people search is best companies for such and such. Okay, so let me give you an example. I did an article, and this came from, I once had and I've had it happen many times. Once I was meeting with this couple back in the day when I still sold pools in Richmond, Virginia, and they said, "Marcus, so we like you, but if we didn't use you, is there anybody else that you might recommend?" And I thought, oh gosh, I hate this question. But of course I had to answer it, right? And most companies don't answer that question. And my philosophy by that point was they ask you answer. So I said, well, I'm going to address this on my website. So I wrote an article, who are the best pool builders in Richmond, Virginia, reviews/ratings. And I came up with a list of 5 of the best pool builders in Richmond, Virginia. And I literally openly discussed my competitors. And I chose the competitors whom I lost the most deals to over the course of time. And what's fascinating about it today, if you go online and you research a lot of my competitors, like reviews, Playmore Pools, they're a competitor. Okay, Richmond, Virginia. One of the first pieces of content you're going to see is that article I wrote. So it's going to bring you to my website, and you're going to start to learn from me. And so that's why I rank for many of my competitors online. If you're learning about my competitors, there's a good chance you're going to learn it from me. And at least this way, I'm a part of the conversation. I accept the fact I'm not going to win every deal. I don't care about that. And people say to me sometimes, well, aren't you afraid you've now introduced them to the competition? Well, no, because I don't think they're dumb. And so I think if somebody wants to know who my competitors are, they're going to go find out. So again, I'm going to assume that they are smart, intelligent human beings, and they deserve an honest, transparent answer. I'm going to give it to them. This is how you become the most trafficked swimming pool website in the world.
Amazing. Amazing. Those 5 components you explain them so well, and they're definitely explained more in detail in the book on how to actually apply them. And I do think that every single business, if they want to succeed, they have to apply those 5 principles and have it as part of their content. So now we know about the 5 principles. Now let's talk a little bit about the content. So you're very big on videos, on creating articles, but in abundance. I mean, we are talking here about 100x probably what the typical business owner puts out there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we say that based on data, Adi. No, listen, I mean, sometimes there's like this argument of quality versus quantity. It's like, it's actually, truth is, it's got to be both. Because if you write a world-class blog article once a year, you're not going to experience a lot of traffic gains in your business.
Right.
And you're not going to get a lot of leads. That's just reality. And so there's a direct correlation between quality plus quantity and the number of traffic, leads, and sales that you're going to end up getting because of it. And the data that we have accumulated has found that our most successful companies, that the ones that dominate their space, like that become the foremost thought leader of their space, they produce about 3 written articles a week. And in terms of video, 2 videos a week. Now, sometimes they might not start video right at first. So you might go 6 months and you're just doing articles 3 a week at that clip or greater. But if you do that for 18 months, you're never looking back. You're going to dominate your space. You're going to dominate your industry. Now, the key, though, is this quality, quantity, and you're following the principles that we talk about, and they ask you answer. Those big 5, addressing the questions that nobody else in your space really wants to answer, right? You're like excited to answer those questions.
Wow. And where do you post those videos? So let's say somebody's listening to us right now, 2 videos a week. Okay, I'm going to start doing the videos. Where do you post them?
Well, whenever we talk about articles and videos and whatnot, first place that I want you to think about is, in a perfect world, we want you to have on your website what is the learning or knowledge center, not just a blog, a learning center. And as part of that learning center, you would have categories or sections. So one section could be articles, educational articles. Another section could be your video library. Your next section could be case studies. Next section could be digital brochures. Next section could be your podcast, if you have a podcast, right? So the different forms by which they will want to learn from you, it's broken out in those sections there. That's your learning center. So it used to be that we just had a blog, but that's clearly not enough in 2022 and beyond. That might be where you start. But today, what I would call a blog 5-10 years ago, today I just call educational articles that are found in your learning center.
I love the idea of a learning center. I just made a note. It's like I have a blog that I publish once a week with articles about how to systematize a business, etc. And I use a lot of I do a podcast about either every week or twice a week. And I use a lot, like this one, for instance, will become a blog because, you are sharing all this knowledge, which is amazing, right? So the concept of a learning center and actually putting the videos there so you can direct your customers, your potential customers there so they can learn directly from you. I think it's a great concept.
And video is just a huge thing, right? And there's a lot of resistance still to video out there. But, and I'm just going to say this because I don't know any other way to say it. When was the last time somebody was on a website, was looking for a video about a product or service, couldn't find it, and they said, well, it's okay they're not talking or it's okay they don't have videos. I mean, they're probably just really nervous on camera and technology isn't their thing. So I'm going to give them a pass and call them on the phone. I mean, nobody's ever said that in the history of the world, right? No. It's not what we do. We say, I want to see it. I want to see how it works. Show me.
Right.
Like that's the mindset that we have. People say to me, well, I'm just not that good on camera. Really? So are you good with people? Well, yeah, I'm good with people, Mark. Okay. So if you're good with people, then it just means that when you're in front of the camera, you need to stop seeing the camera as a camera and start seeing it as that customer, that person that you're with all the time, right? Yeah. I mean, you and I are having this conversation, but we're really speaking to a much wider audience. And we're speaking to that audience, and I'm talking to them like we're all sitting here at the cafe in a circle, just having a chat. I just happen to be talking a lot and they're listening. But it's the feel that I'm trying to attain in any type of communicative moment that I'm having. In this case, it happens to be a podcast.
Absolutely. No, I think it's true. I think it's the content that you put out there. I mean, just by listening to this podcast, our listeners are going to get so much. And hopefully that will go, oh, yeah, I need to get this book. ask, you answer, and then apply it, because it's the application, right? I mean, it's one thing to listen to books and go, oh yeah, this is a great idea, but it's applying it. And the thing that I really like about the system that you created, it is very easy to apply. I mean, yeah, it might seem overwhelming, but from my experience, start with something, start with one video, start with, as you said, it's the quantity and then you improve the quality, but let's start with the quantity of, let's start with one video. I mean, that's what I'm going to do, right? So let's do one video and post it on your website, or one video and put it on social media. And before you know it, you'll do the next one and the next one and the next one. And then you can work on the quality, so you get a better camera, you get a professional videographer, whatever it is, right? And you see people do that. I follow several people that you see at the beginning, they basically took their phone and started recording themselves. That's right. And then it became better and better and better, but it's communicating it, putting it out there and not being afraid to communicate. That is really what's going to cause the difference. And that's what's going to separate you from others in terms of the success.
This is why the internet is dominated by C students, and the A students work for the C students online. Why? Because the C student was okay if they didn't have all the answers right. They just got it done. They just figured a way, like, I'm close enough. I'm going to turn it in. Now, I'm not suggesting that's how you live your educational life, but in terms of online, you have to have this mindset of embrace the messy. All right. It is just that. You got to be willing to embrace the messy with it. Fail forward. Okay. It's going to be a little bit clunky, to your point, Adi. But as you do this, it's amazing what is uncomfortable today will become like breathing tomorrow. Mm-hmm. It's just how it goes. Like you in podcasting, you do it extremely naturally now, right? You're good at it. I'm sure if we listened to your point a minute ago, to your initial episodes, it was probably much clunkier. And that's
my initial episode, like the first one I did, it's not just me, but also, it froze. I mean, basically the internet was not unstable, and it just always happens at the beginning, right? I did my first episode and the internet was frozen. My guest is completely frozen, and okay, I have to get through this episode. And I did, and it was fun and it was fine. It turned out it turned out okay. But it's always, the beginning, you have to overcome those obstacles. And then you go, oh, yeah, I'm good at it. I enjoy it. You have to enjoy it, right? I mean, if you don't enjoy doing videos, I mean, I'm all about pushing yourself out, outside of your comfort zone for sure. But it's also like, if you completely dread it and don't like it, then you'll need to figure out a solution on what to do. Either you get over it, or you find somebody else, or you just don't do it. But most people, I think, they will find that once they start doing it, they will feel more comfortable with it and they will enjoy doing that. You have to show that you're enjoying doing. I mean, it will show, not that you have to show, but if you're doing it and it's kind of like a chore or something you don't like to do, it's a problem. But then you're really not, I mean, and I don't know what you think about it, Marcus, but really, if you don't, it's probably most entrepreneurs, they're entrepreneurs because they like to talk. They have the capability of talking to people and like talking to people. You can't be a business owner or a good salesperson without liking people, able to listen and able to talk. It just doesn't happen, right? Because otherwise you won't be successful. And we're talking about people that are already successful, want to take it to the next level. So the majority of those people enjoy talking to people anyways. Instead of talking to one person, you're just talking to a wide audience, and it becomes, and you like it, and you show that you enjoy doing that.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, it's like, people say to me, like, what is the skill that I need to focus on most? It's to your point, it is effective communication. By far, it is the most important thing we do. It manifests itself in our business messaging, in our sales process, in our content online. And somebody said, well, what does effective look like? Effective means, number one, I'm not trying to sound smart. It's not my goal. I'm not trying to impress you. When I say you, I'm talking about anybody that's listening to this. That's not the goal. The goal is that we experience some sense of communion, that I say something and it's easily understood. Right? It's a great phrase I heard early on in my internet career, which was, it's dumb not to dumb it down. I'm like, man, that is so good. That is so great, right? Because you're like, instead of how can I make this look so intellectual? So how can I simplify this and boil this down so well? for all the terrible things that Twitter has done for society, the one thing it's taught us to do is how to say things in 140 characters, right? And there's a lot of value to being more incisive and being more clear in the way that we communicate. And that's the thing. That's why, they ask you answer so successful. I mean, so many people have said to me, I'd read plenty of books on like marketing or content marketing or digital, this or that, but this one resonated. And it's because I wasn't trying to sound smart. And I also wasn't trying to sound like a marketer at all. It was written to the hard-headed business owner that by the time they're done, literally like the vision I had was the person would read that and they would say, oh my gosh, this is so obvious. Why are we not doing this?
Absolutely.
That's
and
the
those
goal.
are such words of wisdom. So I encourage all of our listeners to click on the link that I'm going to put on the podcast notes and buy the book, either Audible or the book itself, and listen or read it. It's very easy listening. It's very easy reading. It's a story. It's a story that Marcus tells about his experience and how he became so successful. So, and it's very easy to follow. It's very common sense. It's nothing that is like something you cannot implement. And even if that's my belief, you have to implement it all. But even if you implement just a fraction of it, that alone will get you to the next level. And then you take it from there to the next level and next level, because it's all about communication. It's all about honesty and transparency. And it's all about reaching to your customer and helping them, or client or patient or whomever you're servicing. And highly recommended. And Marcus, thank you so much for being a guest on my podcast. It was such a great conversation and I learned so much.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.